The first thing you want to do is turn off the ignition. There should be no lights on in your dashboard. Next, open the hood. Disconnect the air temperature sensor located behind your shock tower. To disconnect this, twist clockwise and slide it out from the back. Next, remove the black plastic cover. This unclips from the front and the back. You will also need to push back the rubber tab which holds it in place. Do this on the passenger side cover as well. Remove the 6 8mm screws that hold the AC system's microfilter in place. Set this filter aside. Next, pull back the rubber tabs that attach to the black bulkhead tray. Do this on both sides. Simply pull this rectangular assembly forward. This will expose a wiring loom that is held into the bulkhead tray by 3 snaps. Use a fingernail or a small screwdriver to release these snaps. Now remove the 2 8mm bolts near the hood support. The entire tray can now be gently lifted away and set aside. Go to the passenger side ECU cover. Unsnap the 2 fasteners on the left and the right side. Unlock these sliders and then gently lift away. The strut tower brace can be a bit in the way, so just be patient. The first step is to free up a bit of room for yourself. To do this, slide this rubber grommet off, and this one too. Now remove the 2 ECU connectors. Each connector has a sliding lock which holds it in place. Pull out your tiny flathead screwdriver. You will need to remove the slider on the smaller of the 2 ECU connectors. Do this by pressing down on these 2 release tabs with the head of the screwdriver. Once released, the slider will slide out easily. If you're applying a considerable amount of force, you're probably doing it wrong. Here's the PROcede wiring harness that you will need to install into the factory ECU harness. With your screwdriver, pull back the tab which holds the black sub-connector secure. With the tab pulled back, the sub-connector will slide out. You will need to repeat this process on the 3 remaining sub-connectors. To install the PROcede harness, we are going to replace each of the factory sub-connectors with the 4 sliding connectors on the plug-and-play harness. Starting with the white sub-connector on the larger ECU connector, we will replace this with the black sub-connector which has been shaved down on the locking end. The arrow on the sub-connector should be facing into the ECU as it slides in. The rest of the connectors will be exact replicas of the factory sub-connectors. These will all slide in the same fashion. Go ahead and reattach the ECU connectors, starting with the smaller one first. The larger one is tough to get in given the small space constraints. To alleviate this problem, you may want to lift the ECU out of its slot by an inch or so. To do this, pull back on the release tab and gently lift up. The next step will be to match the factory connectors to the harness connectors. Starting with the black sub-connector on the small ECU connector, match up the rectangles on the end of each one and gently push the 2 together. Do this with the gray sub-connector as well. The black and the white sub-connector on the larger ECU connector will match up in the same manner, although the black connector will have a slightly larger rectangle than the white. Finally, plug in the large black sub-connector. At this point, the wiring should look something like this. Now is a good time to plug in your HomeLink map switcher. To connect the power, remove the green connector in front of the ECU compartment. It may be difficult to remove, so be patient with it. To prevent stress on the connectors, we are going to remove this tape. If you do not want to cut it, you may slide it down a few inches. With a small screwdriver or pick, open this latch. To extract this pin, you will need to press down upon the triangular release tab. With the tab pushed down, the wire can easily be extracted from the connector. Insert the black power wire in place of the orange wire. Then connect the orange wire to the female spade on the power harness. Do not force this connection. If too much pressure is applied, these pins may bend or even break. To cover the exposed wires, use a small strip of electrical tape and gently put the green connector back into place, taking care not to put any sharp bends or pressure on any of the connections while tucking them into the ECU compartment. To test that all the wiring has been done correctly this far, start the car. The car should start normally. Let it idle for 2 to 3 minutes to ensure that it does not behave erratically or throw any check engine or malfunction indicator lamps. Turn off your car and let it sit for another 2 to 3 minutes. This is very important since the power to the ECU stays on for a bit even after you turn off the ignition. The PROcede unit can now be slid into the empty slot in the ECU compartment. Next, remove the bridge connectors and plug in the harness to the PROcede. This can only be done one way. Make sure you feel a click when plugging in these connectors. Next, we will need to attack the ground. With a 10mm socket wrench, loosen the ground next to your windshield washer's bottleneck. Fasten the PROcede harness's ground loop here. Now start the car. Again, let it idle for 2 to 3 minutes to make sure that no malfunction codes are thrown. With the installation fully complete, we can now button things up. Install the plastic ECU cover. Lock it down on the side corners first, then use the locking sliders on the top and the bottom. Reinstall the bulkhead cover. Clip the wiring loom back into place. Push the rectangular assembly back into place. Reinstall the microfilter with those 6 8mm screws. Secure the 2 8mm screws on both sides of the bulkhead cover. Secure the air temperature sensor. Snap on the 2 plastic covers behind each strut top. Don't forget to resecure the rubber tabs as this plays a critical role in water drainage. Congratulations! Your PROcede installation is now complete. Now refer to our testing guidelines to make sure that your car is functioning properly when driven. Thank you for choosing Vishnu Performance.